Hi, I'm Joanna Fantozzi, Associate Editor with Nation's Restaurant News and Restaurant Hospitality, and we're speaking with Daryl Dollinger, the president of Big Game Brands and the parent company of Atlanta-based Southern breakfast and brunch concept, the Flying Biscuit Cafe. We're going to be chatting a little bit about the company's growth and performance throughout the pandemic and beyond. Thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Of course. So before we get into specifics about the brand, I was wondering if you could kind of get me caught up on how Flying Biscuit Cafe has fared throughout this crazy year.
Well, it's been an interesting year, as I'm sure you know, and we've certainly had our challenges. But the light is certainly at the end of the tunnel. We have 20 restaurants open all throughout the Southeast, and we're constantly communicating with our franchise partners about things that are happening in their community, in their specific market. Our largest market is Atlanta. That's where we're based. But we do have other restaurants in Florida and in North Carolina, Charlotte and Raleigh specifically. And, there's always a challenge. Every day something's going on that's new in outlying markets. Georgia, thankfully, has been pretty easy to work with as far as rules that have been set from, local communities and local government. But it certainly comes with challenges, and we've fought through most of those challenges over the last several months, and I think we're in a pretty good place right now. We've had to change our business, and I'm sure we can get into that. But things are looking pretty good at this point.
And at this point, are most of your dining rooms open, or?
It varies. Some of them are at a limited capacity. Thankfully, we have many locations that have outside dining, and through up until really a few weeks ago in the southeastern part of the U.S., the weather's been nice. It was, the middle of November, and it was 75 degrees in Atlanta, and it's always nice. Even in Raleigh and Charlotte, our most, northern, locations, it was 70 degrees up until the middle of November. But the outside dining has really saved us, and certainly the outside, ability outside has helped us a lot.
Mm-hmm. So let's get into talking about growth then. Why do you think now is a good time to be expanding as a breakfast and brunch concept?
Well, we were in growth mode before this all happened, and we continue to be in growth mode. We do have several locations that are in construction. They have been paused for quite some time over the last few months, but now that's all picking up again. And that's kind of how we took the temperature, is that we realized March, April, maybe into May and June, really nothing was happening. We weren't able to continue construction on some projects. Some just halted right in the middle of construction. Others that were going to start could not get permits, couldn't get licensing for alcohol, for beer and wine. So all those things just naturally slowed us down. But that has changed over the last, certainly throughout the summer and into the fall. And now that we're in December, we have several restaurants, actually 4 that are in construction right now. A few that are going to open right after the first of the year. And we continue to have lots of interest from the franchise side. We continue to get, interested parties into buying our franchise and getting involved with the Flying Biscuit. And I think it just goes back to, we've been in business since 1993. And when people do their research, as most people do when they're making an investment like this, they realize that, they'd rather be with a breakfast concept or any franchise that's, got a good reputation and been around since, for 27 years. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of where it starts. And so we've always been in growth mode. We've just had a pause for about 6 months. And we've kind of figured out different ways to make our business, more accessible, whether it be online or a third party, or outdoor dining, or, curbside dining. All those things we've adjusted to. And I think that's why people who are interested in making an investment come to us, because it's right there in front of them. We've been successful for a long time. And that's where people see us at this point.
Mm-hmm. And so as you make that transition, which I feel like a lot of restaurants are kind of going through this, making that transition from that 6-month or longer pause because of the pandemic to kind of gearing up into restarting projects, restarting construction, or making real estate deals, what are some of the challenges, and what have you done to kind of meet those challenges?
Well, I think most of the challenges start with people. I mean, we've had to, be very careful, or our franchisees have, about laying some people off, about cutting staff. So that's, which is a common theme. We know that not only in the restaurant industry, but in all industries. So that's certainly been a challenge. And I think the first few months, certainly March, April, and May, where everyone was worried about their PPP money and their EIDL loans. I mean, that was kind of the topic of conversation. It seems like that a lot of that is over and done with now. People have gotten what they're going to get. They've survived or they haven't survived. So that was certainly a challenge early on. Dealing with just personnel and how to staff and how to know if you were going to be busy and how to know if a catering order was going to come in, and how to know, what organizations you want to, be affiliated with so you can help first responders, so you can bring food to hospitals and churches and other organizations. I mean, those are the things that were all difficult and challenging at the beginning. But I really do believe we figured it out over the last 3 to 4 months. I mean, our corporate team has done a great job. And the challenges that came with personnel, the challenges that came with the landscape just changing, we figured it all out, and we've changed our business model to such that, it's the challenges. Yeah, sure, there's challenges every day in the restaurant business and the franchising world, but I think we've got a really good, hold on the pulse of what's happening, and we can pivot and change, based on what happens with the pandemic. And so far so good. I don't want to complain because I don't really think there's a lot to complain about. I think we've done a really excellent job, and I think it shows in our numbers, from our franchise partners, and I think it shows in the interest that we still have every day from new franchisees.
Mhm. And you touched on this just a little bit before, but how has the pandemic affected your approach to operations and technology?
Well, the technology side of it is huge. I mean, we were once a business that, 70% of our revenue came from dine in. Now that number is cut in half. It's 30 to 35%. And certainly, we've created our own Flying Biscuit app. We have online ordering. People have access to online order. We use the third-party delivery services. We use the third-party catering services. Of course, we do, to go and pick up, curbside pickup. So there's a lot of technology out there. And again, I credit my team. They've done a fantastic job. We were, when the first hit and people were going through, online orders were coming in, and we were kind of looking at the customers' behaviors and all the things that were happening that were different because they were stuck at home, and because they were, instead of just going out for lunch, feeding themselves or two people for lunch, now we're feeding a family of 5 or a family of 6. So you could tell from the orders that were being placed, and we analyzed that. We every time we got an order that came in at the beginning, we all got copied on it. We set it up that way, whether it be the delivery services or a catering order or just an online order. We all just kind of sat around and picked through and said, well, wait a minute, why are these people ordering this? And wait a minute, couldn't we do that? So we pivoted, we adjusted. We learned that people are very comfortable on their phones, with not much upselling. We, in the restaurant industry, at the table for lunch or dinner, you teach your servers to upsell appetizers and upsell desserts and upsell beverages and cocktails. Well, let me tell you, online, you don't really have to do that, because people were getting an extra side of this and an extra side of that. And by suggestively selling online, instead of just getting an iced tea or a Coca-Cola, they were getting a gallon of iced tea, which in the South is big. And we were charging $5.99 for it, instead of charging $2.99 for a drink like we do in the restaurants. So we were finding ways to adjust with the technology based on the behaviors of the customers. And that's gone really, really well for us.
Mhm. So it sounds like the average check went up then during the pandemic.
Yeah, definitely. It went up. I don't have it in front of me, but I know it went up. It grew, and at the beginning we had less checks, but averages were going up. But I think once we started figuring out the ins and outs of the delivery services, which again, in the past, before the pandemic, was a small part of our business. There was always challenges with the technology. There was challenges with the commissions that you had to pay. There was challenges with drivers not getting there on time. There was challenges getting there and things were missing out of the order, and the customer would call and say, wait a minute, my breakfast is missing. And then who do you go to? So there was all these challenges, and we found different ways to secure the product, to ensure it gets there with good quality. And then we've added some things to the menu that held up really well, even better than our regular menu. And now those have become, staples on our menu, which they weren't there before, just because we tested the waters and it worked.
What are some examples of things that you added?
The biggest thing is the chicken and waffles. I mean, chicken and waffles is something that we added recently, and not every restaurant has it now, but almost all of them have it now. But we added that, and it has flown. No pun intended.
Mhm.
It has flown. The flying biscuits and the chicken and waffles are flying out of here because it holds up really well. It's a good savory meal, not just for breakfast, but for lunch, and even the restaurants that are open for dinner. And then we smother it with gravy, or we smother it with maple syrup. I mean, there's so many things that we do, and that's something that's probably our number one seller right now.
Mhm. And speaking of delivery quality assurance, it must be kind of challenging. I know as a customer myself, certain things travel well, and certain things are a little bit more challenging. Things that need to be crispy. So how do you keep that the chicken in the chicken and waffles crispy?
It's challenging. We don't put it in with the waffle, believe it or not. We package it separately. We package it
Okay.
in foil. I won't mention the brand, but there's a pretty well-known chicken fast food concept that has a really interesting little bag that they use for their chicken sandwich.
Mhm.
And we use something similar to that to keep as crispy as possible. It's not perfect. It's not just like it comes out of the window in the restaurant, but it's pretty good. It's pretty close.
And let's go back to talking about the concept then. So obviously, breakfast is becoming such a huge day part. I feel like every other day a new breakfast concept pops up. So how do you guys kind of continue to stand out in an increasingly crowded marketplace?
Well, everybody loves breakfast. As kids, we grew up, breakfast is the most important meal of the day. So what we have found out is breakfast isn't just for breakfast. Breakfast is for breakfast, for lunch, for dinner, for a snack, for 2 o'clock on a weekend with a mimosa. Breakfast is all the time. So there's certainly more people in this space than there were in 1995 and certainly in 1993 when the Flying Biscuit started. And certainly when we took over in 2004, there is definitely more people involved, but I think we do it a little bit better. I think we do it with a little bit of that Southern flair, which certainly in the Southeast works really, really well. Whether it's the chicken and waffles, the shrimp and grits, or just the grits alone, is what we're known for. So I think there's certainly more people in the space. You're right. But I think most people, when they think of breakfast, they think of the kind of the greasy spoon diner, which is fantastic, especially if you're a little bit younger and you've been out all night and the next morning. But even just, we're very family friendly. We have lots of our franchise partners that are open for dinner, as I mentioned. So we have people having breakfast for dinner. And I think we just do it in a unique setting. We're in high profile locations. We have some great outdoor dining, which is not pandemic or not. We've always had great outdoor dining. And some of our locations are pretty eclectic and pretty well known because they've been around for 20 plus years. So I think it's a good time for us. And I think we're just a little bit ahead of the competition.
Mhm. And so you obviously have that Southern flair to the menu. Do you think that the concept could thrive, and would you want it to thrive outside what I'm calling the biscuit belt? It's a term I made up myself.
Yeah.
So what markets would you be looking to penetrate outside of that?
Yeah, I think it can. I mean, we're venturing. We just opened up in Houston, Texas, which is, granted, it's the South, but it's not the Southeast. We have our first location opening up in the Midwest in Lee Summit in Missouri next year. Could we be in New York City? Could we be in DC? Could we be in Philadelphia? I think we could. Today's probably not the day, but I think in the future, I certainly wouldn't say no. It has to be the right operator. Clearly, it has to be the right location. Just sticking one in the middle of Manhattan or the middle of Long Island or the middle of Philadelphia isn't just going to work. But I think if we do the right research and if we have the right partner, I certainly think it can work. And there's many examples of concepts out there that have been known as regional plays, and they're all over the country now. And I certainly think we could do it.
Absolutely. So then besides numbers and expansion, what are your other goals for Flying Biscuit Cafe?
Well, I think the short-term goal right now is to, you know, stability. Right now, I mean, with everything going on, we're pretty stable. We're pretty happy, and our franchise partners are real happy. And I think the clear cut, decisions that we've made over the last few months have helped our franchisees with their growth, so they could remain stable. We've all been there when you get that call that they don't think they can make it because the sales are down and they're losing people left and right, but their rent is due. We've had those conversations with many of them, and luckily every single one of them has made it, and every single one of them has grown their business through the pandemic. So I think the short term goals are just stability, keeping it stable. I think the long-term goals are to grow and expand with new franchise partners, with our existing partners. We constantly, are talking to our existing franchisees about opening up more locations in their particular market or other markets around them. We are constantly looking at different parts of the Southeast. And just this morning, I was talking to a gentleman from Nashville who's actually coming to meet us tomorrow to have breakfast with us in Atlanta about doing some stuff in Nashville. So we're constantly looking to expand through franchising. And I think probably, come the first of the year, the phone not only is going to keep ringing off the hook, but I think we're going to find some people who want to take that step. And that is always our long-term goal, is to grow through franchising. We've got an exciting brand, an exciting concept, and we've got some good validation from our existing people that are open today.
Mhm. Well, that sounds great. We look forward to seeing what's next for you guys. I think that's all the questions I have then. Thank you so much for chatting with me today. I appreciate
My
it.
pleasure.
Thank you, and have a great
Thanks.
afternoon.
You too. Bye-bye.